Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is a fantastic game, which is a weird statement for me to say with the title of this video. Usually when I say I have mixed feelings on something, it's usually regarding games I consider to be mediocre games. But Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is far from mediocre. By all accounts, this game is fantastic. Not a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but still really good. But as I was playing through this game, something just felt off, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But then I figured out what it was. The jump in quality from AC1 to AC2 was so massive and impressive, I was expecting the same thing from AC2 to Brotherhood. But Brotherhood doesn't really add many new things to the AC formula. To be honest, the whole time I was playing this game, I just kept thinking to myself, this really just feels like an Assassin's Creed 2.5. So why don't we dive into why I have come to this conclusion, starting with talking about the story. Also, as of recording this, I'm feeling a bit sick and have a really sore throat, so if I sound monotone throughout this video, that's why. First, I should probably mention that much like my AC2 review, I am playing this on the Ezio collection, meaning I automatically have access to this game's DLC. In AC2, on the Ezio collection, you are forced to play the DLCs in order to beat the game, as they chronologically take place a couple of years before the game's final few missions. However, Brotherhood takes a different approach, allowing you to access these memories outside of the game's chronological order. Meaning, depending on the order you play your missions, you will either have a very concise, easy to follow story, or the most confusing, all over the place story in all of gaming. On my first playthrough of this game, before I had this channel, I made the mistake of not realizing these DLC missions were for a DLC, and decided to play one DLC mission and then one main story mission, which genuinely made me think this game's story was very poorly written, and I even dropped the game because of this. I will talk more about this later, but for now I'm going to only be focusing on the main story, then I will circle back around and talk about the DLC. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood takes place literally right after the events of AC2. Desmond, Lucy, Sean and Rebecca have all successfully escaped the Templars that attacked their hideout and have established a new base in the ruins of the Auditore Villa. After spending some time as Desmond helping set up this new base, we jump straight back into the Animus with our goal to relive more of Ezio's memories in the hopes of finding the Apple of Eden. The group believes that if they can find the apple, they can use it to prevent the disaster that Minerva warned us about at the end of the second game. Ezio's story starts off in 1499, again directly after the events of AC2. He exits the vault we entered at the end of the previous game and escapes Rome with Mario. Ezio and Mario return to the Auditore Villa, where Ezio explains to all the other assassins what he saw in the vault and lets them know he spared Rodrigo Borgia's life. Machiavelli disagrees with Ezio's decision to spare Rodrigo, which, I mean, fair enough, so do I, to be honest. We then get a brief montage of Ezio relaxing in the villa and getting some mad push from Caterina Sforza. The next day, the villa is attacked by the papal army, commanded by Rodrigo's son Cesare. Cesare kills Mario and is able to steal the apple. Ezio is shot like 4 times in this ordeal, but manages to escape and travel to Rome. When entering Rome, Ezio realizes that the Brotherhood has lost a lot of its power within the city, and decides to rebuild it by recruiting members for the cause and buying property to earn money. It's probably a good thing I can't behave like a real landlord and decide the prices of which I'm renting these properties out to, as I'd make them so high, perfectly acceptable for the market conditions, that the people would probably start a revolution against me. Over the course of the next 3 years, Ezio takes control of Rome by assassinating key targets in Cesare's army and disrupting his supply lines. After returning the assassins to their full strength, Ezio is officially made their leader by Machiavelli, and Ezio even officially makes his sister an assassin. Ezio's actions are clearly effective, as Cesare eventually asks his dad for more money and access to the apple to continue fighting the assassins. Rodrigo refuses, as he thinks Cesare will misuse the power of the apple, and even attempts to poison his own son. Before Cesare can eat too much of the poison apple, his sister Lucrezia warns him of the poison. Cesare then shoves the poisoned apple in Rodrigo's mouth and beats his sister for the location of the apple. Oh, by the way, Cesare and Lucrezia are fucking throughout this story, and I mean, would. Anyway, after learning the location of the apple, Ezio is able to retrieve it before Cesare and uses it to kill Cesare's men. After summoning our followers, we go to confront Cesare, but he is arrested by the papal army. A few years after Cesare's arrest, Ezio uses the apple to check up on him and discovers that Cesare has escaped prison. Ezio hides the apple inside an Isu temple and goes to kill Cesare. Cesare has somehow weaseled himself into leading another army and is currently laying siege to the city of Vienna in Spain, where Ezio fights and kills him. Going back to the present day, Desmond and the gang go to the Isu vault that Ezio left the apple in. As Desmond enters the vault, he sees holographic images of an Isu woman called Juno. Juno seems like a bit of a humanity hater compared to Minerva from AC2, but also drops some important knowledge on us, saying that the Isu tried to merge their DNA with human DNA at some point. Desmond eventually lays his hand on the apple where time freezes and Juno takes control of his body. Juno says there is a woman who would accompany him through the gate, whatever that is, but must not be allowed to. Juno then forces Desmond to stab Lucy. After this, Desmond falls into a coma, where we then hear two male voices saying they should put him back into the Animus because it may be able to save his life. Now, I like this story, but I definitely don't like it more than AC2's story. Not only is it much shorter, but a lot of the stuff in the main story really does feel like it's tutorials for the game's side content. Like, the game's main story wants you to become this super rich landlord who rebuilds the Brotherhood and takes back Rome, but rebuilding the Brotherhood and recruiting new members, well, that's side content. The same with owning buildings and removing the Borgia's influence on areas. I liked AC2 more because the game's side content flowed well with the main story. This game feels like they wanted to experiment more with what they could do with the side content at the cost of less cohesion with the main story. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad experiment, the side content is really good. I just hope this is more of a stepping stone and growing pain into something better with the next game. Before talking about this game's DLC, I do want to talk about the Truth Side mission. As mentioned in my AC2 video, this questline in that game was a phenomenal and eerie piece of storytelling that led to probably one of the biggest bombshells in AC lore. However, in this game, I honestly wasn't feeling it. The story of the truth in Brotherhood basically reveals that capitalism was made by the Templars to keep the common people as wage slaves to stop them from rising up. All of the files and audio logs you receive from doing these puzzles date to around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and basically say the Industrial Revolution was planned to happen by the Templars as one massive conspiracy. Once completing all these missions, you find out that Subject 16 is alive and has preserved himself as a piece of code within the Animus. Subject 16 says some cryptic stuff relating to Adam and Eve, who we saw at the end of AC2's The Truth story, before saying he's too weak to continue talking, then leaves. The thing I liked about AC2's version of this quest is that its story and puzzles revealed all of human history is not as it was told to us, with the payoff being that even the birth of humanity is completely different than what anyone has theorized. The nature of this story could also fit into any time period and not be jarring, as it has to do with all of human history and prehistory. Whereas AC Brotherhood's version of this quest, you're playing in Renaissance Italy to be randomly thrown into learning about the truth behind the Industrial Revolution and modern capitalism, to then get a payoff that doesn't have anything to do with either. I just want to reiterate that I don't think this quest is bad by any means. It is still just as eerie and interesting as AC2's, but I do feel like it lacks a bit of focus and just doesn't blend well with the rest of Brotherhood's content. The Da Vinci Disappearance is AC Brotherhood's story DLC. As the name implies, Da Vinci goes missing. The story starts with Ezio going to Da Vinci's home to ask him if he knows anyone who can take him to Spain. Leonardo offers to introduce him to a ship captain, but first asks Ezio to go find his apprentice Salai. Ezio tracks down the little fucker, and on the way back to Leonardo's workshop, they have a run-in with the Hermeticists, who are members of the cult of Hermes. When they eventually return, Leonardo is nowhere to be found, and his workshop is ransacked. Ezio and Salai determine that the Hermeticists kidnapped Leonardo because they want information on an underground temple Leo had found. Salai finds a clue that says they should seek out 5 of Leonardo's paintings that Ezio owned at the Auditore Villa before it was destroyed. After recovering the paintings, Ezio uses his eagle vision to find hidden portions of a map in the paintings. The map leads to the temple where Leonardo is being held, and Ezio saves him by committing genocide on the remainders of the cult. Ezio and Leo explore the temple where they eventually find a hologram with coordinates on them. Ezio tells Leo that the numbers aren't meant for them and they leave. Yeah, so this DLC story is kind of meh, but at least they didn't do what they did for AC2's DLC stories where the base game literally spoils the ending of them. Where they did majorly fuck up though is that this DLC is set in 1506, but you are able to access these missions in sequence 2 of the base game, which I think is set in the year 1501 or something. Meaning it is possible to do a DLC mission where Leonardo is kidnapped and then immediately follow it up with a base game mission where Leonardo is present. When I first played this game a few years ago, I accidentally did this and it led to a very confusing experience. Not only because of the whole Leonardo randomly reappearing thing, but also because Lucrezia Borgia appears in this DLC too. And Ezio talks to her like they've known each other for years, because canonically they have, but to me Ezio only met her 5 minutes ago. And because when I first played this game I had done no prior research into it, I didn't realise these DLC missions were actually DLC, and I just thought the game's story had horrible pacing. I think what they should have done for the Ezio collection to avoid this confusion for players is to not unlock the DLC missions until finishing the base game, or at least have them in a separate menu to the base game. This is now the second time these DLCs have led to a confusing experience which disrupts the pacing of the base game. Anyway, let's talk about the gameplay. When it comes to gameplay in AC Brotherhood, I could really just sum it all up by saying it feels like AC 2.5. There are some improvements upon what AC2 did, but not anything that I would say is super significant. Probably the biggest change AC Brotherhood made was the combat. It feels a lot closer to the Batman Arkham games thanks to the addition of multi-kills. Multi-kills in Brotherhood are when you kill an enemy after hitting them a couple times, the next enemy you hit will be an instant kill. As far as I can tell, there is no limit to the number of enemies you can one-hit kill, but if it's a big group of enemies you'll usually get interrupted by someone trying to attack you, so it's a bit hard to actually test. A complaint I had about AC2's combat was that it was too easy. Whilst I would say Brotherhood's early game is a lot harder than AC2's, the mid to late game is almost just as easy. The parkour is also very similar to AC2's with the new addition of lifts. Lifts allow you to quickly catapult yourself to the roof of a building. These are scattered all around the map and they are quite fun to use. Speaking of the map, I don't really like it. Half of the map is the actual city of Rome, whilst the other half is more of the countryside. Now, AC2 had its fair share of open plain countryside areas, but most of the missions took place within the actual cities, allowing you to use parkour. I'd say Brotherhood's missions have an almost 50-50 split between doing missions in these areas. And outside of missions being more fun within the city, just normal traversal is too. The horse riding in this game isn't super fun and can feel really slow at times. I also unfortunately found the parkour to be a little bit more buggy in this game than it was in AC2. And I'm not talking about the usual Assassin's Creed shit where Ezio won't grab onto a ledge that's clearly within his reach. I'm talking about actually clipping through objects and getting stuck in them, forcing me to restart the game to continue playing. Outside of this, the only other annoying bugs I found are related to the assassin contract missions. You can send assassin recruits out on missions to gain money and also level up said assassins. When a contract is completed, you will get a notification that plays a sound. However, if multiple contracts are completed at the same time, the notification sounds all overlap, and you just get a blast of ear cancer. This can also happen during story cutscenes. I get that the sound is probably a bug, but I also think it's a poor gameplay choice to have them even be able to appear in cutscenes. A lot of the times as I was trying to get into the story, I would get ear aids with this text appearing on my screen, and it would just ruin the entire cutscene. Dude, my throat is so sore, I'm pooping a little throat lozenge. Much like AC2, this game also has a super OP armor you can unlock by completing tombs. In AC2, new tomb locations will be unlocked when you reach a certain memory block that opens a new area for you to explore. AC Brotherhood mostly does this, however the last two tombs are literally located in the tutorial area of the game, but don't appear on your map until you're essentially at the end of the game. When the game did this, instead of putting these tombs in a new area, I felt kinda cheated. I mean, there was a blocked off area I was waiting to be unlocked and expecting to be there, but nope, they're just in the area I could access from the beginning of the game, but just weren't on my map for some reason. You also don't unlock these last tombs until super late in the game, like I'm talking last 5 levels late in the game. Whereas in AC2, I feel like I had Altair's armor for about half of that game's runtime. This is another way that this side quest just made me feel cheated, as I spent the time to get this armor expecting to get a good long use out of it, but I ended up finishing the game an hour later and barely got to use it. Outside of this side mission though, most of the other side content is actually really fun. The addition of Borgia Towers, being able to recruit, upgrade and call assassins in battle, and the addition of side missions that tell their own separate story being the standouts. On top of this, they fixed their forced stealth missions for the better. In AC2, they would just chuck a fuck ton of enemies everywhere, and if you got spotted by one, you'd have to restart the level. In Brotherhood, forced stealth missions have this clear path you must parkour across to avoid enemies, with much less enemies in the level than AC2 had. These missions do railroad you, feel very handholdy, and are a little bit boring, but I would much prefer these over the abominations AC2 had. To finally sum up this video, I do like AC Brotherhood, however I just feel that the game lacks a lot of focus that AC1 and 2 had. Sure, it did expand upon side content in a positive way, but at the detriment of the game's main story, as there were a lot of main missions that just felt like tutorials for side content. The next game in this series is Assassin's Creed Revelations, which I have never played before, and what I am hoping from it is that it takes everything this game has done with the side content, and especially the combat system, and make sure not to lose sight of the main story. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to like and subscribe. On screen, I'll have a playlist of all the Assassin's Creed games I've reviewed so far if you'd like to watch those. Bye.